Hello and welcome to the This Works For Me Virtual Summit. I'm your host, Fernpate Watson. I am the Director of the Faculty Development Center at Murray State University. Are you looking for a strategy to change the culture for developing online courses at your institution strategically and incrementally? Well, our guest today, Dr. Anthony Pina, will be sharing some strategies with us. Dr. Pina, thank you very much for taking the time to share with us today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Watson. I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. Now, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Certainly. I'm Tony Piña, just like Piña Colada, the drink. My father is Puerto Rican. My mother is blonde-haired, blue-eyed gringa, which is why I look like this. I'm a happily married husband and father of 6, 4 biological daughters and 2, an adopted girl and an adopted boy, and we're one big happy family. I'm a huge music fan, and I've played guitar and other instruments for about 45 years. That's the important stuff. Originally, I came from Southern California, but my education and my career over the past 3 decades have taken me to public and private higher ed institutions in California, in Utah, in Arizona, in Illinois, and finally, for the past 11 years, here in Louisville, Kentucky, where I'm currently Associate Provost for Instruction and Online Learning at Sullivan University, where I oversee online and hybrid course development, instructional design, faculty development, prior learning assessment, and a lot of things that don't necessarily have to do with online and hybrid that influence face-to-face and curriculum. And I have my fingers in all kinds of stuff that my institution is doing.
Wow, you certainly have a wealth of experience. And the title of your strategy is Changing Online Course Development Culture Strategically and Incrementally. So in a sense, you'll be sharing with us some strategies to do that. Now, what impressed you to start using these strategies, and how have they worked for you?
Well, when I arrived at my institution just over 11 years ago, I was charged with increasing the quality of our online courses. We had a good infrastructure for student services and all, but they felt that some of the academics were lacking. And so, so the first thing I did as a good instructional designer, I did an analysis. And I said, okay, what's going on here? And a few problems came to the forefront. First was that our faculty had been building courses with very little knowledge or experience with online education at all. They'd never taken online courses, they'd never seen an online course, yet they were expected to build this online course. They had little support beyond just teaching them how to use the learning management system. And so that was a problem. Another problem was the process for actually doing course design was very inconsistent from department to department. Some of our faculty were given some supports, others were given none. Some were getting paid at different rates, some were not getting paid at all. Some were kind of having to do it as, this is part of your job, where others were getting some release. There were no minimum standards for online courses. There was no evaluation process in process there. Really, as a result of all of those things, there really was no consistency between and among courses, and the quality was just all over the map. And there was not really a high satisfaction, both for the whole process of online courses and for the development. And a lot of people felt that they weren't as good as they should be, that they were just kind of built on textbooks and things, and that we needed a change. And so the solution for this was to implement strategically planned and incremental changes to how we develop online courses. what the role of the faculty were, the role of instructional designers, the process of evaluation, and what we did as far as faculty support and development. And we did this in a planned and incremental manner, and I'll get into more of the nuts and bolts as we go on. But the result of this has been that our team produces, our instructional design team with our faculty, produces about 80 new or redeveloped online courses each year, which is about twice as many as most teams our size do. And that doesn't even count the revisions that are made when they say, okay, well, we have a new textbook revision.
Wow.
And so we have to make some changes based on that. That's either brand new development or significantly redeveloped online and hybrid courses. Our faculty now receive a consistent pay for their work, and our instructional designers are empowered as project managers and partners with faculty. They're not subordinates in this process. And they are equal partners in course development. Each people have their roles. We have a triangulated system for evaluation that involves an internal evaluation and also an evaluation by the academic department. There's a consensus that our courses have improved markedly and continue to improve. And then finally, and really most exciting for me, is that the process that we use for online course development has now been adapted across the university for the development and management of face-to-face courses and curriculum. So the processes that we developed for online are now influencing face-to-face. And that was all part of my deep, dark plot of infiltrating across the university, and it's now happening, and we're thrilled.
Good. That sounds as if you're doing some great work there. So could you help us understand what was the process for changing the legacy course development culture at your institution?
Well, again, as an instructional designer, I started with analysis, what the problems were, how we got there, and what the legacy culture was that contributed to the problem. And then once we got a good feeling about what was happening and why, then we started putting on the visionary hat and saying, okay, what should things look like and how should they function in an ideal world? And so once we got an idea of what we wanted things to look like, then it was a matter of starting to do this incremental work. So next was forming relationships with faculty, staff, and administration. Very important, because previously there have been some things that have been kind of steamrolled across our faculty. Here's a new policy, here's a new regulation and stuff. Now you've got to do this. And so we took a different approach. First, we convinced the leadership of the necessity of having instructional designers to improve course quality. And then we crafted standards using the most popular rubrics and information and standards that were available in 2008 at the time. So we used Quality Matters, we used Cal State Chico's rubric, we used Blackboard Exemplary Course and INACOL and all of those to develop our standards. But then for the relationship part, any standards and policies that we created, we sent first to our faculty academic council. That's our version of the faculty senate. That's the representatives of the faculty, so that they could vet it, they could give feedback. The idea is, if you see anything here that is unreasonable, any deal breakers, bring them to me, we'll work together to do this. And that helped our faculty get buy-in to the standards, because with a lot of them, and we also did our homework, so when we turned in the standards, we had an entire page of references for where those standards came from and the research behind them and all. And so the faculties realized that this wasn't just something that we created in offices. And so they got buy-in, and we were able to say, these standards are endorsed by our faculty. So it's not the institution standards, these are the faculty standards as well. And so once we got those standards in place, then we started putting in place these short-term wins, small incremental changes to try to change the culture. Ultimately, what we wanted to do is change the culture from individual faculty members owning courses. I'm putting my face-to-face course online. Well, that contributed to the problem, and that's the standard model at colleges and universities, is individual faculty member, I put my course online. We wanted to provide our faculty with something better, with more support, and better compensation and all of that. So what we did is we established master courses with the idea that faculty members are creating courses that will be taught not just by them, but by their colleagues as well, by adjunct faculty if we had them, by other full-time faculty if we had them in that expertise. So don't create this course so that only you can teach it. That took a long time. That was a very different culture, because, and the advantage that we had, though, was since our faculty weren't experienced in online course development, we could introduce instructional design principles and all that and just say, this is how you do online courses. Mm-hmm. And so by that, getting them used to using systematic instructional design to do this, and then bringing the instructional designers in to take some of the load off of them, so they didn't have to build the tests, they didn't have to configure the assignments, they didn't have to deal with the learning management system and all. We basically said, okay, before you had to do this much work, now you have to do this much because you're just responsible for content. Mm-hmm. And the instructional designers are going to do some of the heavy lifting. They like that. They like the fact that we were giving them a consistent pay that was higher than what they were getting before. But it also gave me some teeth, because the instructional designer said, they have the standards, and they're going to be evaluating whether or not you're meeting the standards. And if you're not meeting the standards, you've got to provide that extra content. You've got to provide those changes. And ultimately, you get paid when the instructional designer says, all this content has met the standards. So it gave the instructional designers more power. It gave the faculty not having to do quite as much total work, because they didn't have to deal with all of the configuration and the administration and stuff like that. And we had the teeth to say, we don't say if you don't do this, you won't get paid. We say you get paid as soon as you do these things. Mm-hmm. And over the course of a few years, we moved from the faculty as course editors to faculty as subject matter experts. And they get paid over and above their teaching load. So instead of having to teach other classes as an overload, they would get course developments. And that was a lower stakes, lower pressure kind of a situation than having the students. And so it's worked really well over the years. So what happens is we would instigate a new thing, just a small thing. Okay, we're going to instigate this evaluation where the ID is going to, an ID that didn't create the course, wasn't involved in creating the course. A different ID would do an ID evaluation of the course, and then changes would be made because of that. And then the subject matter expert would look at content and things to make sure that everything was right and up to date and all that. So we had those two, and then the academic department would select either the dean or a lead faculty member, or to do another external evaluation for discipline, for accreditation, and to also affirm that the online course and the face-to-face course were equivalent. And so we had a threefold evaluation. So and the academic department had right of refusal. So they could say, okay, we like this, run it. Or they could say, no, you have to make these changes. And so the so the faculty and the academics controlled the input, they controlled the content, and they controlled the output. We did the heavy lifting in the middle. And so by doing this and refining it over the years and giving the instructional designers a little bit more authority and a little bit more authority, and telling the faculty subject matter experts, oh, by the way, you don't have to do this part anymore. The ID is going to do it for you. So we just did that incrementally over the series of years. And again, anytime we did a new policy change or anything major, it went to the faculty and said, critique this, vet it, etc. And so by doing this, we were able to change a culture that people said, you can't change. And so the latest thing that we have done, and this is really exciting. In order to build our online courses, we use what's called a course mapping process. And the course map is like a course architectural document that has the learning outcomes and the assessments and the weekly what you're going to do and the assignment descriptions and all that. And you build the syllabus from all of this. We've been using that for our online courses for years. What we have done with a new provost and some other people in leadership positions, really promoting this idea of they wanted to do the online development first. They said, and so in our College of Business, they said, we're going to create the online versions of a course first, and then we're going to create the hybrid and face-to-face from the online version, which is completely a 180 from me putting my face-to-face course online. They said, we're not doing that anymore because our online courses are developed systematically. You have all these tools. We want to use those for our face-to-face courses. Because our online faculty, and instructional designers hear this all the time, when you teach somebody how to use instructional design to build online courses, they always come back and say, hey, did you know those things also work for my face-to-face courses? And so I've started using these principles in my face-to-face courses and they've gotten better. And I'd go, now you see my deep, dark plot of influencing face-to-face. And that is what is happening. So this year, we are now on an initiative to have these course maps for every course that we offer, and only one course map per each course. So the face-to-face, the hybrid, and the online all use that same course map to develop the courses. Now, there are some differences, and for instance, in assessment, you might say, okay, discuss this principle in the online course is assessed by a discussion forum that does this. In the face-to-face class, it's a reflection paper that does this. But basically, the learning outcomes are the same and a lot of stuff is the same. And what we want to do is really shrink the gap between face-to-face, hybrid, and online. And now they're using those course maps to do their 3-year course evaluations. How do we know whether a course needs to be redeveloped? Pull out the course map and check what's happening each week and the outcomes and all, and see, is this up to date? What needs to be changed? Then you change the course map. They request the course development. They give the course maps to us and the instructional designer and the subject matter expert, and we build the courses that way. And we're much more sophisticated and much better quality across the board. And the differences between the face-to-face and the online are getting smaller and smaller, which is what we want.
Amazing. So how have others responded to these strategies? I know you shared a little bit about that. Walk me through what 1 or 2 faculty might experience. How are they responding to? What are they saying?
Well, at first it was, we're not used to doing this. We feel like we're giving up some control. And so one thing is that we tried not to do any huge changes or multiple huge changes at any one time. It's sort of like the old analogy where you put the frog in water and you turn up the heat a little bit at a time, and the frog doesn't realize that that he's boiling in the water because the change happens so little. And so what happened was we tried to focus this in terms of what our students got out of this, better courses. And we also capitalized on the fact that the institution really had not been supporting the faculty and giving them what they wanted and being consistent. And so it really was, we're going to get, yes, there will be a little bit less control, but you have 100% control over the content. But our instructional designers are going to format that so that it's effective online. And you don't want to have to worry about meeting all the ADA requirements. You don't have to worry about getting into the tests and configuring all the little things like, so basically where we chipped away at the resistance, and most of the resistance was culture. We've been doing it this way for 10 years. What we did was, okay, we're going to do something small. We're going to show you, we're going to establish the relationship so that you know that I'm not out to get you. And we're going to show the benefit to the student and ultimately the benefit to the faculty member. And that's really how we did it. And so we haven't received really any marked resistance in years. At the very beginning, you know, we had resistance because we were telling faculty that understand is not a measurable student learning outcome, and that this assessment was not assessing this thing, or you got all of your outcomes from chapter 1 of the text and there are 15 of them, but you're only assessing 4 of them. You know, so we've had those types of things over the years where we have taught them about measurable learning outcomes and about how to align assessment to outcomes. And we've had a lot of help from the accrediting bodies, because the accrediting bodies are now speaking like instructional designers. And they're saying, so we were also able to deflect some of the resistance by saying, hey, SACSCOC says we've got to do it this way, or your programmatic accreditor says we have to do it this way, and all. And so we were able to say it's not our fault. We're just following the regulations and the standards. And so really right now, I expected a lot of pushback on the whole idea of using course maps for face-to-face. But since all of our deans and most of our faculty have been involved in this online course development for years, this was all familiar stuff for them. So I wasn't giving them these brand new big things here. This is something that they've now been using for years, and they're saying, hey, you know what? You now have to do periodic management and review of your curriculum, and we know that you haven't been doing it this way, but you know that online stuff that we've been doing, you can use those same tools to do this. And they go, oh, I understand those tools. And so because it's a known entity, we're doing okay.
So on the point of being incremental, did you start with a particular department first, or how did you start?
Yes, we started with our College of Business because the dean of our College of Business, and at our institution, our deans are not pure administrators. Our deans also have a minimum teaching load. Which has been really advantageous for us because the deans are then aligned with the faculty and know what's going on and all of that. And so that's been a helpful situation. And so they already had experience with this, but our dean of the College of Business also had instructional design experience, prior instructional design experience in the military. So we always used the College of Business to pilot any of our new things. So we did it with them first.
I see.
And worked with them, and that was an important part of this. So I'm glad you asked that question. We started with one area and worked out the kinks, and then we implemented it across the board, and that really helped because it gained the credibility. You know, we're not doing this untried. The College of Business has worked out a lot of the kinks for it. And so that's been really helpful.
What you're describing almost sounds like a fairy tale. And I know you hinted about some of the challenges along the way.
Yes.
Were there any other that you would like to point out?
Yeah.
One or two?
There were. In the most difficult thing was transitioning faculty from the idea that they owned individual courses to the idea that the academic department actually owns the course, and this course can be taught by other people, because it changes the way you design a course. But we haven't really had the issue of academic freedom coming up, because even though the idea of everybody getting a canned course, that was a challenge too. We create this master, so everybody teaching freshman English composition starts out with exactly the same online course. And, so the idea of, canned courses. But our faculty have full editor access once they get those courses. And they really weren't that interested in changing the learning outcomes or even changing much of the assessment. They wanted to be able to change and modify the instruction, and they have 100% ability to do that.
So, for example, they could drop a course introduction in for themselves.
They could upload their own narrated PowerPoint presentations. They could, if they really liked a TED Talk, they can link to a TED Talk. If they want to make their own video, if they want to, say, go to this website and all that. So the instruction, even though there is a base instruction that meets the minimum requirements, our faculty have full access to change that as they want. A lot of them don't. A lot of them say, hey, this is fine, I'm just going to teach this, particularly our adjunct faculty. But a lot of our full-time faculty have different styles and ways of doing things, and this accommodates that. But that took some convincing, because the idea of a canned course, oh no, I don't want to teach a canned course. So we haven't had that much of a problem. And honestly, a lot of the problems were resolved by having a consistent way of course development that paid our faculty, and that let them know exactly what they needed to do in the timetables, and then bringing in the instructional designers for help, because using instructional designers at my institution is not optional. You're assigned to an ID as a subject matter expert, and you must have weekly contact with that ID throughout the whole process.
Weekly? Did you say weekly?
Weekly.
That could be time consuming.
Well, not necessarily, because a lot of that
has been time consuming. How do you?
Well, because the idea is faculty are creating content, and so they need to turn the content in. What we don't want is for faculty to turn in an entire quarter's worth of content on the last day of the calendar. And so the idea is you turn in the content, you get feedback from the ID, and then you turn in more content, you get feedback from the ID. And that happens pretty much on a weekly basis. Now, some weeks are just an email saying, I'm doing this stuff and I'm going to get this to you at this. So it doesn't have to be like a 3-hour meeting.
I see.
Or anything.
But typically
consistent contact so that there's no AWOL going on, and so that subject matter experts don't drop off.
Right. So typically, how long is this course development period?
About 3 months.
Okay, that's good to know.
About 12 weeks.
Okay.
And our quarters are 11 weeks long. So basically, you're creating approximately a week of content each week, which is a lot of work. It's a very big job. So on the agreement that we have the subject matter expert sign, and that's another important thing, is that the agreement is very specific as far as the deliverables and as far as the conditions go. And one of the things is, if you don't have 7 to 9 hours of time to work on this class, do not sign this agreement, because this is going to be about as much time consumption as teaching a class. And so, and you're getting paid as if you were teaching a class. And in some cases, the course development is actually paying more than somebody teaching a class. And so that really helps. And again, the challenges were more early on as we were building all of this and having to deal with the fact that we're changing the way that we do it. But again, this is going to be the result. And so as we've had problems, we've tweaked the contracts and we've tweaked some of the things, and we've tried to find ways, how do we lighten the load of the faculty member in this? Is there something that we can do that makes it easier? So one of the things that we did was one of the challenges was we were expecting faculty members to author a certain percentage of the content. And so a lot of the faculty were writing lecture notes and things like that. And it was very time consuming. And it was a burden to our faculty. And we were getting pushback on it, saying, why are you having me have to create this stuff when there's so much great stuff available that I can just bring into the course? We said, there's no reason for that. So we have said, okay, all those requirements are out. We just want you to go and vet the best stuff that's out there for teaching your content. And then if there's nothing out there, then we expect you to create it. But if there's something good there, and now OER has become a big initiative for us. So we're really pushing OER.
Tell our viewers what OER is for those who might not be familiar. I mean, you don't have to get into details.
Yes, free and open educational resources that are available, that we can use within our courses, and that our faculty don't have to create, but they go out and get it.
Exactly.
So OER can be anything from YouTube videos to TED Talks to learning modules that were created by other people. Just that's an entire different.
Exactly. I actually
you have one on OER.
Yes, I actually did an episode on OER. So viewers, check that one out. It's a previous episode. So I would imagine that this process you are describing, even though it's successful, someone at another institution might be saying, would it be successful at my institution? Or they might be a little bit hesitant. They might resonate with what you have said, but what would be some first steps that they could take? And could it really be successful at your institution?
And there are institutional dynamics and situations that make this easier and more difficult to do. And having been at different institutions, there are things that I've been able to do at this institution that I couldn't do as well or as much or as quickly at other institutions. And so the ones who would have the most difficulty with a process like what I'm talking about are highly siloed institutions. At large research universities, each college is its own kingdom unto itself, and they often don't share resources or interact with each other, and there's a lot of redundancy. And unfortunately, some things can actually be weaker at the more prestigious universities because they're not sharing expertise and resources with each other. Those are difficult. What I'm talking about is changing institution culture. At a highly siloed institution, you may just have to work on changing college culture.
Oh.
So the College of Business might not be able to completely change the College of Medicine or the College of Education or whatever, unless they are able to show such good outcomes from it that it influences the other colleges. So so satisfaction with the status quo is one of the biggest things. I think that change, the two things that I have seen that influence change more than anything else are dissatisfaction with the status quo. What we're doing is not working. We need to do something else. We're unsatisfied with how things are going. There must be a better way. Or two, some outside influence or inside powerful influence that scares us into change. Like, say, new regulations or competition or changes in finance or changes at the state or federal level, or even a new president or a new provost or something like that. Those types of things influence change. If you have a very high satisfaction with the status quo, we've been doing it this way for a long time, we see no reason to change and all of that, that's difficult. That's difficult because the more ingrained and calcified your culture is, the more it is important to do things little, subtle, and build those relationships. And so to get started, as far as that goes, first of all, look at what is and what should be, and just say, if we didn't have these constraints here, what would that look like? And we ID types sometimes call that the optimals versus the actuals. So, our needs assessment stuff. And so you do the needs assessment. You say, okay, get a good picture of what's going on, why it's going on, and what are those cultural things. Because honestly, money, technology, and those aren't the big things. People will say they are. It's culture. That's what needs to change for things to happen. Look for a couple of small things to change for the better. Don't try to tackle something big at the beginning. Get a couple of short-term wins. Start small. Big changes are usually the result of a whole bunch of small incremental changes. And that's what I've learned. We've made some big changes. If I would have come 10 years ago saying, we're going to be doing this, no way. But building these little things, little at a time, a small win here, a small win there, a small loss here, a small challenge here. Okay, we'll work on this one and all. There are very few things that are completely impossible to do. Establish those relationships early on, because you can't, no change agent can do it herself or himself. It just can't be done. You need to work with the people who can do it, and you need to establish your relationships. You need to establish your credibility. You need to establish the advocacy. You need to show people that you're not the enemy. Even if you are on the dark side, you're not the enemy. Take advantage of the fact that faculty are student-centered, and always talk, it's important to tell faculty how they're going to benefit, but keep letting them know how the students are going to benefit. And I've seen a lot of hearts melt just because this is what's going to be for the student. And related to this is always keep in mind, don't be discouraged. Play the long game. Because if you try to play the short game, it's going to be frustrating because everything takes longer than you think. So you have to be patient. You have to be optimistic. You have to know that culture's hard to change. When I first came here, I was told constantly, this is too ingrained. You're never going to be able to change this. This is never going to happen. And I would hear that constantly. And I was so Pollyanna, I never let that discourage me. And so I've seen all of those changes happen. Those changes that never would happen, they happened. And the other thing is tie change to other changes. This has been a very important thing. Change begets change. So if there's some new initiative going on, see if you can tie it to that. Things like if you're adopting a new LMS, well, you're on Canvas. You'll never adopt another LMS. If you're on some other, if you're on another LMS and you're going to change to D2L or Canvas or whomever, tie your change to that. If they're getting a new ERP system, if they're offering new degree programs, if you have a new leader, if you have a new president, a new provost, it's easier to get these changes done when there is already a change in the air. Accreditation, that's another good one. When you're going through the reaffirmation of accreditation, that's where you can change and improve, because ideally that process is what should do it. And then, yeah, tie change to other change, and don't be discouraged. Play the long game.
Excellent. You have shared so many practical strategies with us today, and I know you could share more. You're like a cup running over. So, and because of the time constraint,
Right.
would you tell our viewers about some resources that they could look further at to find out more?
Sure. There are, I don't want to, since I've been overloading with verbiage, I didn't want to overload with resources. So let me give you 3 ones to get started. One is an article in the online Harvard Business Review by Robert Schaefer called "To Change the Culture, Stop Trying to Change the Culture." It's all about this incremental stuff. Another blog by Ralph Mayhew, 8 Steps to Ensure Healthy Incremental Cultural Change, also deals with some similar things. And then the other thing, and this is really a more holistic one, to keep yourself sane while you're going through this. I love working on yourself using Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Because those habits also help to facilitate not only personal change, but really can be applied to organizational change. And it's very readable. And so those 3 is where I would get you started to get you in the right mindset for incremental, long-term, long game change.
And Dr. Pina, I know you have a book out. You're not recommending it to our viewers, but I think somehow it could be relevant, somehow depending on where they are in the big scheme of things.
Oh, well, okay. Time for the blatant self-promotion. 2 of my colleagues and I, Victoria Lowell from Purdue and Bruce Harris from Dixie State University, collaborated as editors with 50 of our colleagues on leading and managing e-learning, what the e-learning leader needs to know. It's published by Springer, and it's the most, really, that we've been able to find the only and most comprehensive guide for people who are leading online learning at an institution, but who don't have a background in instructional design, online learning, and educational technology, which is really most of the people in upper management, deans, provosts, vice presidents, and so we wrote it for those people. So it's not scholarly. It's not a bunch of literature review or anything. It's, you can make decisions about these. This is what you need to know about it. This is what you can do about it. And here's some references to find out more. And so we have experts from all around the country and the world on different aspects of leading online learning. And we put it together in 1 volume. And so if you happen to be a member of the Association for Educational Communications and Technology, AECT, this book is available in the AECT member library for free. So you can access a PDF copy of this book for free. Otherwise, you can go to Springer or Amazon or any of the others or get it, or you can, bribery works too, so you can contact me. And we just want to be able to help get information to decision makers who often are not making really good decisions because they're not listening necessarily to their instructional designers or ed tech faculty and people like that. So maybe they'll listen to people who wrote a book about it.
Wow, thanks. So I would ask you to add that as a 4th resource to the list of resources that you'll be sharing. And viewers, I will be linking to those resources in the video description below, so look out for that link. And Dr. Piña, thank you very much for sharing with us such practical strategies today.
You bet.
And viewers, I would encourage you to check those resources out. I'm going to check them out myself too. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of this virtual summit. See you soon.